Hey everybody, just a quick note before we start this video. This video was intended to actually be an interview where I interviewed Larry Bilotta. Larry Bilotta is a relationship and marriage expert, author, speaker, creator of the flag page Marriage 101, Environment Changer course, and the founder of Life Discoveries Incorporated. Larry also happens to be a friend of mine and my mentor. So Larry had the great idea of interviewing me. He said before we started recording, why don't we make this interview about you and you talk about your life's journey. I thought, wow, that's a really good idea. So we went ahead and did that. I do plan on having Larry on again. And the next time I have him on, I will be interviewing him and talking about his life journey and his teachings. And I think you guys will find that video incredible as well. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy this video and take care.
So Gil, this is your podcast.
Yes.
This is your podcast. And I think about the days when we would talk and you would be what do I want to say? At death's door. You would be at death's door. It's like, gosh, is he going to make it out of death's door? And that's what it felt like. It felt like you were at death's door. And it was always like just, it from one call to another, it was like death's door, almost death's door. And like almost out of death's door and then back in death's door. And you were always at the edge of die all the time.
Yeah.
And then when you think about your childhood, and it's like hair raising, the childhood you had, because you had all kinds of worse start in life kinds of things happen to you. And I was thinking about this, us doing this call, and I was thinking about, wow, this is really a call about Gil. This is not a call about me. This is a call about him and his life. He's the inspiring guy here. I'm not the inspiring guy. He is, because of what you did and what you overcame and what you turned your life into. So if you want to do a story, I think the best way to start the story is for you to start with your beginning. Because I don't know, has anybody heard your beginning story?
No, not really.
Oh, well, I think we should record that.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Let me figure out how we're going to start this.
You want to start at the beginning with what kind of home you were born into.
Okay. So, I was born in actually San Juan, Puerto Rico, and to my dad and mom were definitely chaos kids, especially my dad. I remember when my mom told me that when she married my dad, her mother, my grandmother, who passed away, God rest her soul, said, "Why are you taking him away from me? I'm going to teach him responsibility at the age of 24. My dad came from like a pretty poor upbringing. They lived in like a commune, and there was like dirt floors. And while my grandfather made good money, he had like a taxi service business. He didn't really care about any of that. I mean, he had money to pay for my dad to go to college. My dad ended up dropping out 2 years into it. And then he decided he wanted to be a pilot, and he started like piloting dual prop planes, and then he dropped out of that. He could never complete something, which I've struggled with that in my life.
So your father actually built you to be a quitter, then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
did he attempt to quit on his marriage to your mother?
Surprisingly, No, but I think that was more my mom was not the quitter. This was her second marriage, and having kids with my father, she really tried to shake responsibility into him and stuff. But he would constantly run away and leave us like with like no electricity, no running water.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. Several times we were homeless.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and I remember as a kid, like looking at all the other kids around me at school and like with envy because I thought, they have this normal life and here I am and I'm like homeless living out of our station wagon.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so my dad also had a magnificent opera voice and he
What an interesting twist that is.
yeah, that's one of the things I'm glad that he raised me exposed to like classical music and opera because I can really appreciate that music. But he had a teacher who was like world renowned, and he actually offered to teach him for free.
Hmm.
And he told my mom, he's like, "Your husband is the best I've ever had, but he doesn't believe in himself."
Oh, geez.
And I remember when my dad would sing, he would constantly cover his mouth, and sometimes when he was in a good mood, I would hear him singing in the shower, and my friends would come over, and they were like, "What record is this?" And, "Oh, it's my dad singing." I mean, he had an amazing voice. My dad had so much potential.
Hmm.
Um, but growing up with his mother, who was very narcissistic, she never allowed him to have friends or because he would get hurt. It was more about her and
Mhm.
her fears than my dad, and it really damaged him. So yeah, growing up, I didn't really have a good father figure in my life, and
So your
I'm the
father was this very very talented guy, but when he got help from outsiders, he didn't actually do anything with it. He didn't
no,
actually grow the talent.
no, he didn't. He
So
didn't at all.
so if he had opportunities to do things, which he probably had, he literally couldn't take them, and
No.
he would run from them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so while your father's running, how does he treat you? What kind of temperament and personality does he have?
He he was mad a lot. And I remember sometimes he would discipline me quite harshly. Um he'd take his anger out on me,
Mm.
which I found later on in my life I was starting to do the same thing to my kids, especially my oldest son, reminds me a lot of me.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, he wasn't pleasant to be around when he was in a good mood. He was pleasant to be around. My grandfather, his father, was a very charming man, liked by the whole everybody. So he had that side of him too, and I gained that superpower. That's what Ainsley likes to call it. I can get along with anybody,
Hmm.
and my dad seemed to have that in him, but he took more of his mother's side, who she was just bitter and
Mm.
just mad at the whole world and constantly blaming everybody. So he wasn't very pleasant to be around a lot. He did.
So your father's struggling with his anger and you're struggling with personality. What's your mother doing in response to him? What's happening to her?
Um, she tried to hold it together for a while. She would always encourage him. She told him, "Look, my mom was a very educated woman. She graduated college when she was 19, and she had the opportunity to work at the embassy, making like $150,000, and this was in the 70s. And she turned it down because her dream was always to be a stay-at-home mom.
Huh.
and raise kids, which I'm so grateful for. Um, Unfortunately, she married the wrong man for that
Yeah.
because he was a terrible
Yeah.
provider.
Uh-huh.
But she told him, look, take this time while I'm raising the kids to pursue your dreams.
Wow,
And
she
of
was a
course,
saint.
yeah, I mean, my mom's not perfect. None of us are, but she really tried to support him. And she got him several opportunities to audition at the Kennedy Center.
Wow.
And
She got the opportunities for him to actually use and demonstrate his talent.
yeah,
Does he
yeah.
follow through?
Every single time, the day before he had the audition, he would get sick.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
There it
And
is. Wow.
I'm thinking to myself, imagine what kind of life we would have had if he would have took that opportunity. I mean, and just for him alone, you know, we're obviously will be part of that, being his family, but it just, yeah, he didn't take the opportunity and always had like low end paying jobs.
Wow.
Um, my dad has a passion for cars and for like technology, and I got that passion for it. Hence why I'm in like video production and all that. So there were a lot of traits that he gave me that I'm really grateful for. But going back to my mom, she tried to hold it together. And I remember when I would come home, she would always have dinner ready for us, and the house was extremely clean. She taught me like social manners and grace. She put me in Boy Scouts
Wow.
because actually Cub Scouts, and then I went to Weeblos, and then Boy Scouts, and then I went to Eagle Scouts, and I was in Eagle Scouts for about 2 years, and then I discovered women. Um, so, but I was really grateful that she did that because it gave me the opportunity to see other men, purpose men,
Hmm.
uh, that had their act together and did manly things. And um, it's amazing because I'm a lot different than my younger two siblings in that sense because I had that opportunity. I used to get picked on a lot growing up because I was like one of the only Spanish kids in my neighborhood. And my mom one day said, "That's it. We're going to put you in Taekwondo and you're going to learn how to fend for yourself." I was scared of my mom when she would get mad. She was very patient, more than my dad. But after about the third time that we got evicted from our house, which I think I was like 11 or 10, and she saw her all her personal items just thrown out on the street,
She's
she snapped.
trauma.
Yeah. And ever since then, she just never was the same. And she started hoarding things and, started getting cats. I remember one time we had at one point 33 cats. And,
Oh, jeez.
like every house we would destroy, it would be destroyed. And, she just never was the same after that. And she told me one time, she's like, I just got exhausted, being wearing the pants in the family. It's kind of sad to see her uh, that way because my mom's always been a very, very strong woman, but now she's 80 and, she just doesn't have the energy that she used to.
Wow. 80 years.
Yeah.
Wow. So what happens to your father?
My father, growing up, uh, he still was unstable. He could never hold a job down. Like I said, he was constantly running away. At one time, he actually ran away to Texas. We didn't know where he was for like months.
Uh-huh.
And by that time, if I recall correctly, I was married in my first marriage. And it didn't affect me as much in terms of like stability because I was already, living on my own. But he just, yeah,
Oh.
he just couldn't get it together. And then later on in my life, he was in the military for a while, and he was able to get 100% disability, and they had to like retro pay him a bunch of money, and they were able to buy this house, a really nice house in Gainesville, 6 bedrooms. And for the at the end of towards the end of his life, he was able to have some stability um, financially because of he was getting money from the veterans and from Social Security.
Well,
Um, so
so
you
military service made that possible for him.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
he
and
didn't
then
quit the military. He stayed with it.
he actually got an honorable discharge.
He did.
He couldn't
Okay.
handle that. He couldn't
He
handle
could
that either.
he couldn't handle it either. So when we think about the messages that are in your subconscious, the messages from your father are to quit, and the messages from your mother are to do something stable, except your mother really kind of cracked when she couldn't really hold her children in one place
Hmm.
because she couldn't be a provider too. She
Right.
couldn't be a family raiser and a provider too.
Exactly.
So when we think about failure messages, your father gave you lots of failure messages, and your mother gave you struggling messages. Would you say that's the two things that you have? Struggling
Yes.
messages and failure messages?
Yes. And terrible relationship dynamics and just terrible marriage programming. They still fight to this day, you know.
Huh. Seriously. In their 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was really bad. I've had to just tell them, hey, look, mom and dad, like, we take them out for dinner sometimes, and they're both trying to get me to get on their side, and I'm like,
They,
look, mom, dad, I
they
love you
never stop.
both. Yeah, and it's kind of embarrassing sometimes because here's Ainsley, and she's just trying to enjoy time with them, and I'm just like, mom, dad, stop. If this continues, I'm just gonna cancel our reservation. I love you both, and honestly, I just want to enjoy time with you. And they finally calm down, and then they enjoy, and we have a wonderful time. But yeah, still to this day.
So, your first marriage, what happens to you? And what I'm asking is now that we know the messages that you have that are in the subconscious, and the big pot of the subconscious that we don't understand, whatever's down there comes up, and when it comes up, it grabs you and takes you over and makes you do things, right? So, what happened in your first marriage? What kinds of things did you end up seeing happen to you, and how you handled all of the situations of your life?
Yeah. Well, where do I start? Well, I started to notice that whenever my ex, my wife at the time, and I would get in arguments, I would actually run away from it.
Oh, just like your dad. Uh,
Exactly. Yeah. And
okay,
I would yell and scream, and just
just
like
like
my
dad.
dad. Yeah. And uh, it 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 and my wife at the time, she had terrible programming, and she would yell and scream,
Hmm.
and she was very stubborn. And me being like a soft-hearted man, it was intimidating, so I'd feel scared and in a corner, and I would yell even more and scream and run away. I would run away or stay at a friend's house or at my parents' house for a couple of days, and yeah,
No,
it
but this
was.
time you have kids, right?
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
I had kids. I had start when I got married, in like about 6 months into our engagement, we found out that my ex-wife was pregnant. And I went off to college because I told her, I said, look, we'll get married, but I want to finish school. This has always been my dream. So by the time I graduated college, I had two kids already.
Huh.
And then I had another two. So I have four children, two girls and
Wow.
two boys. And this was, definitely not a great environment for them. We had a lot of love for each other, um, and good intentions, but our conditioning just, got too much into the way. And I noticed more and more, I'm thinking to myself, God, I remember in my marriage, that I always said I would never be like my father. And I fought that like
Mm.
with all my might. and to the point where it was exhausting. And I constantly felt like I was trying to prove to everybody that I wasn't like my father. I remember my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, he was he was a general contractor, hardworking guy, and he was always tell me, my wife at the time, or he's lazy just like his father. And I was constantly trying to prove to everybody, that I wasn't like my father. And lo and behold, I ended up being like my father. I remember one time my ex-wife said, "Look, I know you have this dream of starting uh, your own business. I'm gonna give you. I got a hold of some money, and I'm gonna let you buy. I'll give it to you so you can buy a bunch of video equipment." And this was like an extremely kind gesture in her, because I always people. I'm like really passionate, and people tend to believe in me, and they would invest in me, and then I would let them down because I was scared, like I didn't believe in myself. And I started off, like really working hard, because I had a full-time job at the time, and then trying to get my business started. And then I just self-doubt slumped in, and I would get complacent and lazy, and I struggle with ADHD, and I would just focus on other things, and I had another opportunity where I met this woman. I remember I was having a smoke break. This is when I was younger. Actually, this is before I was married, but I was dating this girl, and this woman started talking to me. She just had a friend of hers that recently passed away, and we were just talking about life. And I was on my lunch break, and she's like, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, well, I work at Babbage's. I like video games and stuff, but what my real passion is, I love movies and video production and audio production." She's like, "Oh, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm a country singer." And her name was Virginia. And she's like, "I have a group called Virginia and the Blue Dots. You can check it out at Tower Records." And I'm showing my age here. Um, and you can see that I'm legit. I have several albums. She's like, "Look, I tell you what, we're coming out with a new album, and we're going to shoot a music video, and my husband is in the similar. He directs them and shoots them. Why don't you come over for dinner, have dinner with us, and we can flesh out an idea for a video, and you and my husband can work together." She's like, "I really like you. There's something about you. You
There
have
it is,
really good
Gil.
energy."
There it
Yeah.
is. It's right through the family tree right there.
Yeah, exactly. And I was so excited, and I ended up telling my girlfriend at the time, and Virginia was a very attractive woman. Obviously, she wasn't. Her intentions were with me not to have an intimate relationship, but she was a married woman. She didn't seem like that kind of person. But my girlfriend got really jealous and said, "If you go over there, I'm going to break up with you." And of course, me being scared of losing her, and also being scared of, oh my gosh, this is a great opportunity, I'd canceled.
Your
And it
father.
worked. Yeah.
Just like your father.
I mean, my life would have been, so, if I would have taken that opportunity, God knows where I would have been now. But in a way, I'm glad it happened that way. I probably would have never met my fiance. So, but yeah, later on in the marriage, things start to get really bad between my ex and I, and just constantly fighting, the stress of four kids all at once, and we were young, and then all the other responsibilities of buying a house, and also my ex, she was born in Colombia, and they were kind of poor, and they all lived together, and so I would never have any privacy. you know um I would come home, and there would be a million people competing for my wife's attention. I'd wake up in the morning and take a shower, and there would be like her aunts and cousins in my bathroom. Like, you know. So there was a lot of tension there, and I didn't know how to handle it. And my ex always seemed to, I was the last on the list, even after the dog, you know. And
You
so
know,
one thing,
she was raised in Colombia and everybody was together.
mhm,
And that's a childhood message. Everyone's together. And so you marry her, what do you get? Well, you get everyone's together. You get the whole family moves in. Why? Because you have to have the whole family move in because that's what the child had said to do, right? And you had to quit. Why? Because that's what the child had said to do. And you couldn't follow up and follow through because right? So all those things were there. And I think a thing I don't want to pass over is the idea of how you tried so hard to not be like your father. So I explained this thing called buckers. And what a bucker does is they're like a bucking bronco who throws off the rider. And so how did you buck? Well, you said, I'm determined to not be my father. And when buckers buck, they buck with willpower. They're very conscious. They're very determined. And when they're very conscious, very determined, they want to throw off the father every way they can. And so they go through 3 steps. And the 3 steps happen many, many times a day. So step number 1 is, no, I'm not doing that. Step number 2 is borrowing a value from something else or someone else. And you borrow that value. And then number 3 is you now act out that value. You act out that value with some kind of determination that you're going to not be like your father. And so stop, I'm not doing that, borrowing a value in your mind, and then acting it out. Those are the 3 steps of the bucker. And because the bucker has to live that way, they live with willpower, which takes an extreme amount of energy. And we're talking about 5, 10, 15 times a day, they do this little thing inside. And nobody knows they're doing it inside. They can't see it. They can't hear it. They can't know it, right? But the only reason I know this is because I've talked to so many buckers for so long, and I start to realize this pattern of step 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, over and over again. So talk about how you did 1, 2, and 3, and what it felt like to be living in that 1, 2, 3 lifestyle of the bucker.
oh, ugh. I mean, that's still to this day, dealing with that, but it doesn't, it's not as powerful, and it doesn't overtake me. Occasionally when I'm tired and stuff, it does, but yeah, it was so exhausting. I mean, I felt like I was going crazy. And my dad was diagnosed with schizophrenia and almost bipolar, and I'm thinking, my God, do I have that?
Wow.
And yeah, and it was like, and then I would, like you said, I would look at other people and take their values, and then I and admire them, and then when I couldn't execute it and not be like them, I would beat myself up even more. So it was just like this reciprocal cycle
Yeah.
of just, beating myself up, and, oh, you're just a failure. You're worth nothing, And on the outside, it would be frustrating because people were like, you've got so much potential. And when you enter a room, you light it up, and you're charming. And I'm like, I don't see any of that.
There it is. The chiming is of your grandfather, and some of the charm that your father carried, that's in you. And
Yeah.
that's like a natural, easy thing for you. But the cycle of 1, 2, 3, stop, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this instead, and then acting it out is, it's literally willpower at work against the mind. And so you're literally fighting your mind. And that's like, not only is it exhausting, but it's tedious, and it kind of picks on you
Yeah.
because it's reminding you that you're failing. And it's really painful to be reminded that you're failing even while you're working so darn hard. And so that's really what the phenomenon of buckers is. And so when we talk about Gil's story, we're really talking about a guy who is actually doing the poster child of the Chaos Kid. The Chaos Kid is raised in the chaos of his childhood, and what happens? Nobody knows what that means. They don't know what does it mean that you're a chaos kid. That means the messages that they gave you are in you now. And that means they're actively chasing you now, right? That's what it felt like. They were actively
Yeah.
chasing you, right?
Yeah.
And so your response was to fight the mind. And I don't think, Gil, you ever said, I'm fighting the mind. I don't think.
No, it's funny because my mom, she was very into like esoteric knowledge and metaphysics, and that's actually how I found your environment changer course, because I was like, there's got to be something deeper than, because I watched like Marty something, or I can't remember his name now, save your marriage, blah blah blah, and
Okay.
I'm like, just kind of behavioral. Do this technique, and it's not working with my ex. At my wife at the time. She's pissed, and she's like turning something that I don't recognize, and I just kept pursuing it, and I found you, and I think I was very open to it because of my mom raising me that way, but even being exposed to like metaphysics, used to go to these psychic fairs, which
Wow.
there were a lot of people there that weren't right in the head. We're using that as an scapegoat,
Wow.
which gives this, community of reality creation and, spirituality a bad name. But I didn't realize that this was my programming.
Hmm.
I was totally unaware of it. Totally unaware of it.
So you got in the course and then you found out that, oh, they made this, they made this exist in me. That's living in me. And because
Yes.
that's now living in me, when my father gives up on an audition, I have to give up on an audition. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow. When my father gives up on an audition, I have to tell this lady that I'm not coming to her house. Right? That's the specific reality of what happens when you're built to have failure messages and not feel good about yourself. And what are you? You're a mix of charisma and confidence and uncertainty. You're a mix of both of those things. And talk a little bit about now that we're going into your subconscious. What what came out from the subconscious that was there? Your mother got angry. Your father got angry. You had to get angry. And so in your first wife's life, she had the same thing. So she had to get angry. Anger is something you had to do because the subconscious said you have to.
Mhm.
You had to, it literally took over everything. It took over every emotion, every sensitivity, every thought. It's all now governed by anger. So what happens to you, because you've got an anger from your father and an anger from your mother, what happens to you when you're in a marriage and you're trying to sort through all the difficulties you've got to face with raising children and paying your bills? What happens to you?
Well, I ended up real quick, just for the audience. I found Larry through one of the courses that he developed called the Environment Changer course, and more. It was not so much about saving your marriage, but about personal freedom, and then in turn, uh, changing the people around you and inspiring you. And his course changed my life, and I owe my life to him, because it absolutely changed my life. It took me a while to get there and to get it, but yeah, I got it. I was like, I can't quit. But it just progressively got worse and worse. And
You're talking about the anger. It,
yeah, the anger, and especially the resent. I felt like my wife at the time was holding me back from accomplishing my dreams.
an
You know.
outside force was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I was blaming a lot. I was blaming her, and then the kids, and everybody around me, and I wasn't pleasant to be around. And it was like, it was my ex would say, it's like you got this dual personality. Like, I love being around you. You're super passionate and loving and caring and supporting, but then you blow up. Because I wouldn't express myself, because I didn't know how to express my wants and needs in a constructive manner. and then it would just build up into this bubble, and then I would explode, and it would just come out really ugly, and it wasn't productive for anybody. And instead of just speaking my mind, but in a way that I could say, hey, look, this is what I need, or I don't like this. I didn't have any of that. So it just got progressively worse and worse, and to the point where, like, you know my kids were, sometimes scared to be around me. My youngest one, he was always he was this very different soul, because he always never really took sides, and he loved being around me. But my older kids, especially my oldest son, he he was very hyperactive and full of a lot of energy, like I was when I was a kid. And I would try to shut that down in him, and so would my ex. And I see the same patterns in my life repeating in his life. So,
Wow.
but yeah, it just got progressively worse till one day, we went to Colombia. I think this was late 2009, and she kept inviting like all her family to go with us on like on these different retreats. And I'm like, can we just for once just be us? And I ended up blowing up and saying things. And of course, in the Spanish family, stuff spreads faster than a fiber optic network. It's impressive how fast. And of course, it's the game of telephone. It gets exaggerated, and oh, he said this and that. And then when we got back, um, my ex told me, she's like, I can't take this anymore, and I want a divorce. And then, like, I was in like fixing mode, and like and trying to like consume information. What did I did wrong? Oh gosh, my family, is gonna be broken apart. And it was scary. And I remember I would be around her, and my heart would just be pounding out of my chest because of fear. And she just became like somebody else that I didn't even know. And she would start going out a lot, and come back late. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then in the whole process, I ended up like moving downstairs, because I said, look, let's not do this. Let's think about our family. But I became like a little boy, and she lost respect for me, and understandably so. Um, I it I couldn't lead my family, you know, and uh, it just she just and at that time I was taking the course. I just wasn't ready for it. I was still so focused on what she was doing, and not what I needed to do.
Mhm.
So our marriage ended up falling apart, and I gave her pretty much everything, and I ended up being homeless for a couple months, living out of my expedition. Thank God I had that SUV, because it was big enough that I could sleep in it. I remember,
It's funny, Gil, that you're talking about living in your car. You were a
yeah,
child living in your car, in your parents' car. And so living in the car, it seemed like a really great bottom place. And
yeah,
you even started to say, hey, this is a really good car.
oh
Be-
yeah, oh gosh,
Because you had the childhood that said, hey, this is what you do. When you hit the bottom, you live in the car. That's what you do.
yeah,
And
and it
there's
was
a comfort
funny.
to there's a comfort to that.
Actually, yeah, absolutely, you're totally right about that. I do remember thinking to myself too. Some nights I would just stay up, and had my smartphone with me, and I'd be playing calming music, and I'm thinking to myself, shit, this is my dad's life repeated all over again. And had the knowledge at that time of like programming, and what you had taught us chaos kids and everything, but
Right.
it didn't really sunk in. That was like the darkest point in my life. I I was a former shell of myself. No confidence whatsoever. I gained a lot of weight. I blew up. I'm 6'1". I blew up to 276 pounds.
Well,
I didn't care about how I dressed, and
or how you
then
ate.
or how I ate exactly.
Yes.
I didn't love myself.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd call into you sometimes, like you said, I'd be at death's door, and then I'd be motivated a little bit, and then I would just fall. I'd fall back down that hole again. And I ended up being able to rent out a room. And oh, well, before that, I ended up losing my job.
Wow. Yeah.
I got laid off, and then I got arrearages on my child support, and I couldn't pay it, and I got put in jail
Wow.
on
Talk
my
about
youngest
hitting
son's
bottom.
birthday. Yeah, on my
Wow.
and I begged my ex, please don't do this. They're gonna put me in jail. She's just like, F you. And my poor son was like, where's daddy? And we were gonna
Shit.
meet for bowling, and she's like, I didn't realize we were gonna put him in jail, which wasn't the truth. And I ended up getting put in jail like about a year and a half after that because I couldn't find a
Wow.
job, and I just didn't care.
Well,
And it just it yeah, it was a terrible time in my life. And then I was able to get a little bit of money, doing odd end jobs here and there, and I was able to rent out a room in a house of a friend of mine's ex-husband. And I lived there for about 6 months, and it was nice, but I after a while, I just money wasn't coming in, so I had to move in with my parents.
hmm.
And by this time, I was in my early 40s. I was pissed.
Wow.
I was so embarrassed. I cut contact with all my friends,
Hmm.
and it was crazy because I didn't know who I was at that moment because I said I was a family man.
Hmm.
I was a husband. And at that time, I associated myself with that, but I realized that that's not who I am. I'm a spark of. This is what I believe. I'm a spark of the universe. I'm a spark of God.
Hmm.
And those are just nothing but labels.
Yes.
But like, I was so embarrassed, and I moved in, and my parents had a condo at that point, and two of my siblings lived there, so I slept on the couch for like over a year, and my mom had like tons of birds and cats, and
Shit.
like it was like the birds were going off all day,
Oh, wow.
and eventually I got used to it, and I oh gosh, it was terrible. And I remember having to bring my kids over, when I had visitation for them, and my three older kids didn't want to eventually come over, and understandably so. Luckily, Gabriel did. And I went into this world of video games.
Hmm.
I love video games. I still do to this day. Um, and that's I have another channel, and I talk about technology and things of that nature, and video games and computers and all that. But I remember getting addicted to this game called Grand Theft Auto.
Mhm.
And me being a man, we want to have a purpose. We want to have something to be able to build and conquer. And in
It,
that virtual world, I was able to do that. And I got
yes,
lost in it.
it makes you feel successful.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. And I'm an escapist. So it really enabled that. And I remember actually getting like somewhat of a sponsorship, and they sent me some equipment, and I built a computer, and I started like trying to start a video game channel. But in the back of my mind, I was always wanted to start a personal growth, but I was like, how the hell am I going to start a personal growth channel about spirituality and all this stuff when I'm in my 40s and I'm living with my parents. I can't even record a video because there's just birds chirping everywhere. And but Larry, I never stopped listening to the EC calls, the
Mm.
momentum calls, and I would always look at my literature,
Wow.
and I kept practicing and practicing, and I'm not against. And I didn't give up. I was like, I'm going to do this no matter what. It took me a while to get it, but I remember one day my dad got a nice sum of money, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to buy this house, and you guys can live in it. We'll have plenty of room, And we ended up moving out of the condo, which, oh, that was a nightmare. My mom didn't want to let go of all the stuff that we didn't need because she was just so attached to it all. And we ended up buying this house out in a nice part of Gainesville. And I had a room to myself, and things were starting to look up. At least, in that sense, I had some privacy. I wasn't sleeping on the sofa. And I remember one day looking in the mirror at myself, and I was just disgusted.
Mm.
And I said, if you're so tired of it, do something about it. And I just started walking. And then I met this guy, he was probably in his late 20s, early 30s at the time, and he was out in Giant, um, collecting money for veterans. He wasn't a veteran himself, but his father was. And he was like really like jacked and in shape. And I'm like, man, what's your secret? And he started telling me about intermittent fasting. So I started doing intermittent fasting. And I would walk, and I would do these walking meditations, and listen to the EC calls. And it was wonderful because
Well,
it was a time where it was like it was to me. And I started looking forward to walking. And by that time I was divorced. It was finalized, like several years before that. And my only kid that wanted to come and see me was Gabriel, my youngest son. My other three didn't. And, that it was really hard because while I understood why they didn't want to, I missed them. I missed, I missed like all their high school years
mm,
and graduations and things of that nature, because I wasn't a man. I wasn't a father. I was
mhm.
too caught up in my trauma, feeling sorry for myself, which is funny because that's what my father ended up doing, and my mom too. Because when she went and she snapped, she, she could have went out and got a job. My mom was an educated woman, but she was stuck in her trauma.
Hmm.
And I ended up telling my mom the way I felt about it, and my kids told me the same things. It's funny how, like you say, your childhood patterns just keep repeating in life. So, about a year after I started walking, and well, no, I would say probably about 3 months. Actually, let me go back a little bit. A year before about 6 months before I started like really exercise, taking care of my health and really getting into like meditating and ritual. My mom has this ritual where she would communicate with my grandfather, her father, on Halloween. And she told me one day, she says, "Oh, by the way, I talked to your grandfather, and he's doing really well. And he says, don't worry about you. You're going to be fine. You're going to meet this blonde woman, and the both of you are going to help each other, and she's going to change your life." And, my mom was always a very good psychic, but I was just like, yeah, whatever, mom. I'm thinking to myself, I'm in my 40s, I'm fat, overweight, and I have no money. What woman is going to be interested in me? I stayed single for 9 years.
Um,
I told myself that I didn't want to bring my problems into another relationship. And I just, for a while there, I hated women. And then I realized, you know what? I came from a mother. I have two daughters. I love women. This is not good. So I ended up about a month after that. I ended up. My sister invited me to a 4th of July gathering with a coworker of hers. At that time, she was with another guy, and they lived in this really nice house. And I remember going over there, and she was showing us around the house, and they had a car full of like classic cars, and I was just like, oh, the whole time I couldn't stop staring at her. I was like, God. And I remember leaving and telling my sister, your friend is like hot. She's gorgeous. And so I knew her. I knew my fiance like 2 years before her and I started, to actually get involved. And then fast forward to about 3 to 6 months of me starting to walk and doing all these meditations and taking, trying to put my life and my pieces back together. Uh, my fiance, she started coming over to the house a lot to visit my sister. And she was going through a breakup with her at the time boyfriend. And her and I started, talking to each other. And we became friends and we kind of supported each other, like through her breakup and like me, even though I was divorced, it was like I was still trying to, put my life back together. And one thing led to another. She had some issues and she was going through chaos herself too. And I I was like, I really like this woman because she saw, excuse me, she saw like who I was, you know, like inside, even through all the fucked upness, excuse me, and all the chaos. And she would tell me, I see potential in you. And I remember calling you, and you were like, because you asked me the same thing with my wife. I just wasn't ready at the time. My ex-wife, do you want this girl? I said, absolutely. Do you want to save her? I said, yeah, absolutely. And boy, I'm glad. I'm so glad that I stuck through with it,
Hmm.
because my grandfather was right. She did. She's changed my life, and I changed hers. And it's a
Mhm.
beautiful story, to be honest with you, because her and I, my sister didn't like my sister didn't want us to be together.
Mhm.
She's like, she's wild and crazy. She's gonna break your heart. And if I didn't have your course, I wouldn't have lasted long. And but
Mhm.
we would have to meet in the car, and it was just we spent most of our time in our Mustang,
Mhm.
which by the way happens to be my favorite car. And now here we are. And I think about it, it's crazy because going back to I know I'm kind of jumping around here a lot. There's a lot of stuff, but going back to the game Grand Theft Auto, I actually created a female avatar that looked like her. And and she's really good with guns and all that. And I'm like, man, I'd love a woman that's really good with guns and feminine, and like it has a sense of fashion, because I like fashion. And drives a badass Mustang. And I had a white Mustang in the game. They called it a it was a different name, but it was basically a Mustang. That way they didn't have to pay royalties. It was white with blue stripes. She had a Mustang that was white with blue stripes.
So if we look at you obviously have a lot of technical talent
Mm-hmm.
because you can learn you did learn concepts really well. Uh, because like who knows how to create a video game animated character? Very few people know how to do that. Because when you go into the game world, there's maybe 2,000 people who know how to do that, who actually
Right.
know how to.
I'm sorry. This game was already existed, but you could create an avatar in the game.
That's right. But to be able to create animation yourself, that's that's a really rare group that you could do that, right? So the idea that you could create in your world, because as an escapist, because your father was an escapist, you're an escapist. So your father escapes, you escape. What's a great way to escape? Go into a three-dimensional world where there's height, width, and depth, and go create in that world. Because in that world, all the consequences are game consequences. They're not life consequences, they're game
Right.
consequences, right? So that's where you actually excelled. You excelled in that place. So when you fall in love with her, you say, wow, all the stuff that she is, I'm going to put in this place. I'm going to put in my world. And you did it.
Yeah. It was funny too because this was actually before I met her, like 2 or 3 years. And let's talk about a little bit about reality transurfing, which I know you're
Okay.
familiar with. You introduced me to that. I thought about this a lot, and I'm like, you know, I I feel like I manifested it, but I didn't have a whole lot of importance in it because I was like, oh, it's just this is just a game,
Uh-huh.
and in it I would just get completely consumed and just happy, and so I
Wow.
that wave came, and I'm like, wow, why can't thinking now like why can't it apply that non-attachment to other things? Um,
But you got the principle.
yeah,
You got the principle of letting things go because it's just a game. And when you see life, it's just a game. Uh, there's kind of two people who look at the world as a game, and they love video games. Those people, they love video games, and because they love video games, they see that the game has game consequences, right? Well, game consequences, when you leave the game, when you leave the computer, the consequences go away, right? And so companies have tried to make real money tied into the game because they
right,
tried to drag real money into the game and make consequences like that, right? But people, when I talk about the two types of people, the people who say it's just a game and only the consequences of the game, they really don't matter. And so there's that transurfing, let it go and release it, and nothing's of importance. Because you have that ability to now do that, you're one of those people in the game because I'm just letting it go. It's okay. But what you did is you tied a real person and a real car from the world into the game. And look how they connected in the game. The real
it's
car and the real girl connected to the game. And now what happened? Gil, you started to care about the girl in the car in the game. Didn't you try to protect the girl in the car in the game?
I did,
You
I
did.
did,
Talk
I
a little
did.
bit about how you did that.
Uh,
Because we're talking about
Well,
Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is a very elaborate game.
it is. It is. I liked playing as the female avatar. I had a male avatar, but I just remember like thinking about my ideal woman, and I would just put all this energy into it. And I remember like my Grand Theft Auto, the character creation is not all that great. A lot of people try to make female characters, and they end up looking kind of weird looking. But like my character looked really good. She had platinum hair and green eyes, and you know, same body build as my fiance, everything. But I had an offer. This girl wanted to pay me like $1,000 if I would have gave her my Grand Theft Auto account because she loved my character so much. But anyways, um, I just remember like we would go off on these adventures. And I mean, I know it sounds kind of silly. At the time I was a 40-year-old man, but it would really escape. And I was like, I would imagine like music videos in my head of her and I together and fighting, and like fighting gangsters and drug lords and robbing banks, all those things. Not that I would do that in real life, but I remember like actually imagining those things, and then I would like go to sleep thinking about that.
Wow.
And it was crazy. I remember one day, I don't know why, but I said to myself, I said, you know what, I'm ready for a relationship, even though I wasn't financially ready or anything. And then that I had met her before that, like I said, but she started to come over like a week after I said that, and then one thing led to another. Oh my gosh, she looks like my old cat Lancelot. Is a handsome. Is a boy or girl?
That's a boy.
Yeah. I have a Pom Chi. Tucker's his name, and that's our son. He's a Pomeranian Chihuahua. He's a sweet boy.
Oh,
But yeah. So I it's been an amazing. an amazing journey because I can't believe where I am now to where I was then. Like, we got in a condo together, and then we ended up moving here to this townhouse. Um, she is actually studying. She's an RN, a nurse, and in August it'll be 3 years. She's going to graduate with her nurse practitioner's degree, a master's, and that's going to open up a whole new world for her. And I can't, I can't believe it. I mean, we she's a really good homemaker. I mean, and this is my office, and it's just gorgeous. I come home and there's candles lit. Like she likes the artificial candles that look real, and jazz music's playing, and I come home to peace
Nothing.
and quiet, and like she likes cars, and I can talk to her about cars, and she can understand, like, oh man, look at that Corvette. It's got the LS and such and the Mustang, and I just I can't believe where I am. Like
So,
sometimes she I'm really hard on myself still
mhm.
because I'm about to be 51 next month, and I'm like, God, I wasted so much time uh and not pursuing my YouTube channel. I could have been so much farther along. And while I'm making good money, you know, I want to make more money. I mean, I want to take, care, and I want to travel. And I feel like, gosh, I'm 50 and time's running out. So like my Freddie's been nipping at my heels for that. But I've just said I've been focusing on my gratitude and realizing where I've come from and realizing, hey, look, you're scared, you don't know what's going to happen, but you still got your health. You take good care of yourself, and you got a partner who supports you. And let me tell you real quick, she is the biggest Freddie radar. Boy,
She's
she
a
can
Freddy.
smell it.
She's a Freddy detector.
Oh my gosh, she can smell it on me to like before I even like, let's say my Freddie starts kicking my ass. By the way, Freddie, guys, is think of it as your dark side. And he if you listen to him, your life's going to go in the wrong way. I would love to have you on another time because I would love to interview you. That way you can share your concepts and all your things, which is what I planned on doing this time. But this is very interesting. Um, but she can smell it before I even come home, and like I can't. It's like hard for me to lie to her. What's wrong? Nothing. Bullshit. But I'm glad because she keeps me on my toes, and so that's right now that's what I'm struggling with in terms of like realizing where I came from, and my Freddie's been getting on me about my age, and which truthfully I don't feel 50, um and but I feel an enthusiasm in me because, for instance, I'm doing this interview with you. I'm I've bought some additional equipment, like, even though I feel fear, because by the way, I had over $80,000 in debt. My credit was terrible. It was 350.
Good.
Terrible. And I used to have good credit, 850 when I was married. Paid off all my debt, and um my credit score is great. Like, I worked really hard to get where I'm at, but
You know,
now I'm
when you say I worked really hard, when people hear that you worked really hard, they think you worked hard in terms of hours for dollars, but the work hard that you did was actually emotional work. And I think about how did you get out of this horrendous pain that your father mother built the basis for? Because that's what was in you. That foundation was in you, and it kept dragging you back. And this is, when you were playing the game, you did a very amazing thing. you said, I love this character in the game. I love this car in the game. I feel successful in the game. And every time you felt successful in the game, you were imprinting your mind that I'm successful. And you kept doing it over and over and over again. And with the love of the game success, you start to feel a love for I could succeed in life.
Yeah.
You were starting to teach yourself from the game that you could succeed in life. You know, there's parents who literally focus on what's wrong with video games, and they try to get the kid to stop playing, because what they're doing is they're thinking you're becoming addicted to the game. But we're not becoming addicted to the game. What we're doing is we're becoming addicted to the idea of succeeding. And when you start to think, what is my idea of succeeding? What you did with a game is you literally built your mind into a model of how I'm going to succeed. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to fall in love with a woman. What am I going to do? I'm going to be responsible for a car and a woman. You were literally creating a model of how you were going to succeed in life. And so when you started to get into the leaving the game and stepping into life, you met her, she appeared, and you started to say, this is like the game. This is like the game. What would I do in the game? I would go towards the intention of success in the game, and now I'm going to go in the intention in life. And so how did you pay off all that debt, right? Without getting into the dollars and cents grisliness of it, you literally lived in a model in your mind of succeeding. And you paid off all the debt by succeeding in the game and succeeding in life because you lived the model. What the model did is the model cut away your parents' messages and replaced it with the message of success in the game. Because, you know, actually, as you express this, you expressed, I love to succeed. Well, what did the game do? The game gave you an opportunity to have a model of succeeding, didn't it?
Yeah.
Right?
I never looked at it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It created a model of succeeding. So you were succeeding in the game, and you put a character in the game. As I said, you know, there's very few people who can make character that looks like a real person, right? Why did woman want to take your account? Because she saw you had the ability to do what you and millions of other people don't have, the ability to make a relatable character, right? So as a character becomes less and less relatable, they become more awkward and more stick-like, right? But as you figure out all those things, and you figured out all those things of how do I make this person more lifelike? That's all part of success. That's all part of the idea of succeeding. And that game, like, I don't know how many hours you spent on that game.
Over 1,000.
Yeah, it's over 1,000 hours, right?
Yeah.
But what were you doing? You were literally imprinting yourself with success over and over and over again. And so what was the value of the game? The value of the game is actually a transurfing value. What is transurfing? It's riding on top of a power greater than you. That's what you're doing, transurfing. Transformation, surfing, right? Transurfing. That's why it's called transurfing.
Right.
Riding on top of a model of power greater than you. And so what were you doing in that game? You were riding on top of a power greater than you, because that game was greater than you. The development of that game, Grand Theft Auto, won all kinds of awards as a spectacular piece of great entrepreneurship, and also a technical marvel, right?
Yeah.
That they made it better and better, and they made it greater and greater in all kinds of ways. But that was all, like what we could say is Grand Theft Auto was a model of success, and they put into the user's life a model of success, right? Now, the thing that the game was full of violence, right? But what do you have to do in that game? You have to decide how you're going to solve problems. Isn't that what you spend a lot of time doing? How do you solve problems, right?
Yeah.
And so when you spend all this time solving problems, you're actually talking about a model of succeeding by solving problems. And one of the problems in the game is criminals want to do terrible things, right? So what do you want to do? I want to solve problems. I want to end terrible things, right? So that's what your model was. Your model was, I want to defeat terrible things. I want to rise above terrible things. And so altogether, Grand Theft Auto, with all its parent surface violence, underneath it, there's actually a model of success in there. And you are actually a demonstration of that. You're a demonstration of how you use this game to create a model of succeeding that you applied to real life.
I
And
never.
that
Wow.
woman and that car was a real key to connecting real life to the game.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I remember one day I made a screenshot of my avatar. I called her Lila, and my mom comes in and goes, "You know that looks a lot like Ainsley." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it absolutely does." She's like, "Yeah, that's kind of scary." And I I've been not debating, but I plan on releasing a video talking about that in more detail because it's it's kind of inspiring. I manifested this video game character came into my life, and the funny thing was she came with everything I needed to grow and to find myself again. I had
Mm-hmm.
no confidence whatsoever, and here's this gorgeous woman, could have anybody, and I, my Freddie would be like, oh, she's gonna leave you for somebody else, or you're not good enough, and I kept fighting him and being, just being myself. And when I was on the wave and I was, doing my calm, safe, secure, likable light, all that stuff, and I was myself. She, that's what she fell in love with, and
Mm-hmm. So,
she
so
said,
the if you think about the woman herself, and she's a chaos kid,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
So you're a chaos kid and marrying a chaos kid, right? And you're in full awareness of the chaos, right? But what you're doing is rather than using your mind to fight the three-step process, right? Stop, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this instead, and then acting it out, which is literally a force of will activity and very, very hard to do and keep it up. Now, what you're doing is you're turning your ability into love. And love is what changes everything.
yeah,
Because what you're doing is you're leaving fear and you're moving into love. And she's the key to moving to love,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That doesn't mean your friend is not traveling with you and traveling with her. That is. But just the fact that you know that there is a Freddie and you know how it works and you know you're awake and aware to it. And she is not really aware like you are. I mean, you can explain it, but she can't explain it. She just has another sense about her, about what that is and what to do about it. Uh, but if you look at your relationship before you marry her, uh, you're actually looking at a whole lot of awareness, keeping you moving into a world of love instead of a world of fear.
yeah,
Because your whole story is a world of fear story.
yeah, yeah. I'm like I've said before. I'm a lover. Always have been since I was a kid. My mom used to tell me I would go around chasing all the girls in Puerto Rico when I was 5. She said you would see an older woman, you'd be like, "Ven," she would say, you would say, "Vente aquí, dame un besito, por favor." I've always been a lover. I'm passionate, um, and I've just learned to embrace that and apply that in other aspects of my life, and like, my work that I do, and trying to do this doing this YouTube channel, and I try to trickle it into every part of my life. And I'm very expressive. Like I'm constantly telling her I love you, and you complete me, and I mean, like, I really mean it, like it just fills me up with emotion, and so I try to take that and apply it, and that tends to kill my Freddie.
Mhm.
I've also made peace with him. Like, okay, I hear you. I get you. Like, I'm no longer against him. I mean, there are some times where he really attacks me, and I'll get caught up in that, but I can get out of it.
Mhm.
Especially if I keep with my meditation and my rituals and all that. my self-love. You know, if I don't do these things, I start slipping. And she's really quick to be like, have you meditated today? I don't mean to say it like that, but you know, that's what my Freddie wants it to sound like, you know. I'm like, God damn it. She's like, you go meditate, you know. But
That's cute.
yeah, you know, I've it's I've made peace with my Freddie and understand that he's always gonna, you know, always gonna be there, and he has a purpose. Like his intentions are good, just in a way that, you know, he's trying to protect me, but it's like I'm I'm in charge of this show now. I'm steering this boat. You know, I will say one other thing. I never had a really good role model. Like I said before with my dad, I never knew how to lead,
Mhm.
and I'm still struggling with that in my 50s. How to lead this family, but like, you know, she's very patient, and she's like, you know, you are the head of this family, and you know, you're the way you feel impacts us, even Tucker. And when you're not doing good, we're not doing good. And for a while there, I was like earlier last year, I had a panic attack where I thought I was having a heart attack, and I had to go to the hospital like 3 times, and they told you're perfectly healthy. It was because you know, like I was like, man, I got this huge responsibility to lead, and I don't want to fuck it up. But you know, I'm embracing it. So
You know, the story, the Gill story, is very inspirational because if we think about the poor uh, around the world, the poor in all the cultures, the poor have all the same stuff that you had. They had all the stuff, the hard beginnings, the difficult messages, uh, the the built into a cycle and going round and round. They had all that stuff. And what you are is you're a
excuse me.
demonstration of how do you lead? How do you leave this life? That's really what you did. And actually, when you think about it, it took you 51 years to do this. It took you 51 years to begin here, to go through all the scrambling and turmoil, and then find your way out. It took you 51 years to do it. Well, don't you think that's pretty spectacular? 51 years? That's all? Your father, he's 80. He didn't figure that out. He never figured that out. There's millions of people who never figure it out. They literally die in their struggle and anguish. They just don't know. They can't solve the problem in a lifetime. Well, you did it in 51 years. I think that's spectacular.
I never looked at it that way.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
you got to look at it that way, Gil.
I never looked at it that way.
51 short years, you did it in 51 short years. You literally took a life of failure and turned it into a life of success in 51 short years.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I've been, like I said earlier, I it's always in the back of my mind. Oh, you know, you're halfway through your life, but it's
No,
like I see friends of mine and all that, and I'm like, oh man, I'm, and it really puts things into perspective. Like you've come a long way, my brother.
yes, you have. Yes, you have. And so the phrase that I'm coining is 51 short years.
I
51
like
short
that.
years, right? So when you say the phrase 51 short years, what you're saying is I went from the bottom and poverty, and that's really what you were born into. You were born into a poverty lifestyle, like millions and billions of people are born into a poverty lifestyle, and you left it, and 51 short years.
Yes.
Like, wow, that's amazing. People don't do this in lifetimes. They took whole lifetimes and didn't do it. And you did it in 51 short years. It's almost like a sign you should put up on your desk.
You
51
know,
short years.
I'm actually gonna do that. I'm gonna put it on my desktop. So every time I boot up my computer, I'm gonna put it on my phone too, and then I'm gonna make a little plaque of it because that is wonderful. I always appreciate your ability to do that. You're amazing. You know, the other thing I'm very proud of, I lost 107 pounds.
Wow. Wow.
You know,
Who's not impressed with that?
I'm at the gym and I'm okay.
That,
So
that's all part of 51 short years.
thank
All
you.
of it is.
Thank you. It was one of the best decisions I made in my life. I've gained a little bit of weight because I started getting, but it's okay. I've been going to the gym and 10 pounds. What's 10 pounds when I've lost 107? So,
Yeah.
um, but I really, really am so grateful for you to do this, to come and do this interview. I would like to set up another time if you would be so gracious so that I could actually do an interview with you because I really want to get people exposed to like your course and your teachings and all that because we need this in this world. And Larry, you saved me. You changed my life. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you, Gil.
Like it was amazing. If I didn't have your course, I don't know where I would have been in life. And I find it an honor that you were able
Well,
to do this.
well, that feels spectacular to me. That you're able to say that.
Thank you. Well, hold on. Stay online for a second once I end the recording. I wanted to thank everybody for joining. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I will post it in the next day or two on YouTube, and look forward to more interviews and other great content on my channel, Lotus Floss. Till next time, take care. Love you guys. Peace.